Right then, welcome back to another vid. I don't know if anyone else ever gets this, but I tried to do this video yesterday and it wasn't working. I just couldn't do it. I put the camera on, sitting down right in this very position, and I started talking and my brain was just thinking of other stuff. I was trying to do this response, I started it, I got about 2 or 3 minutes in, and all my brain could think of was, I'm really hungry, you know, let's go watch Quantum Leap. It was like this kind of argument with himself I was having. Not literally, I'm not a lunatic. But, you know, I just couldn't concentrate. And I could tell that the words that were coming out of my mouth were just, it's like I just didn't want to be there. I couldn't be bothered. So I stopped the vid after about 2 or 3 minutes. I played it back. And just watching it, it was evident that I just didn't really, not didn't care, but I wasn't in the mind frame. I wasn't in the mood to make a vid. So I thought, oh, bugger it. And then I wasn't going to do it. And then I thought, no, I'm actually going to do it. Today, feel a lot better. My brain isn't thinking about Quantum Leap or going off and eating. If it does get a little bit kind of hungry or thirsty, I've got my tea ready. So yeah, now I can do it. And anyway, basically, I was watching a vid yesterday by Dave Webster. And I'm not sure if you're going to be aware of Dave's channel, but you really should. I know we always come on camera and we say, oh, check this person out, got a really good channel, etc., etc. But Dave's got a really good channel, and I've been aware of it for, I don't know how long, a long, long time. And I'm going to put a link in, of course, and I'll mention him at the end of the vid as well, if I remember. But please check him out, because he's only, I say, you know, only, got 290 subs. And I think that's kind of criminal for the way he comes across on camera and the content that he provides. You know, he does a lot of talkies, and always raises, you know, interesting topics and subjects. He does a lot of gameplay for a vast array of systems, Saturn, Atari Jaguar, PS2 I saw the other day, all sorts of stuff. Did I mention Dreamcast? I don't think I did, but he does Dreamcast games, and I believe he's programming a game as well for the Dreamcast. I mean, how cool is that? I mean, I watch it, and I'm kind of fascinated by it, but it just goes well above my head. I haven't got a clue what's going on, but it is interesting nonetheless. And I think at 290 subs, he deserves so much more. And he plays the guitar, and he's got a really cool intro as well, with him playing the guitar. At least I think it's him, unless he's lying. And it's really good. And I remember it was probably around about Christmas, he did like an extended version of like 5-10 minutes of this one guitar, and there's like several different solos. I think it was the scenery in the background. Was it of the Pennines, like Yorkshire and Manchester and all that kind of stuff? And maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'm making that bit up. And as a guitar player myself, you know, I was thinking, it's really good. Wouldn't mind covering that. Maybe one day. But anyway, check his channel out. I'll put a link in below. You really will like his stuff, particularly if you like kind of retro-based things. But I will mention him again at the end of the vid, if I remember, like I say. But anyway, Dave was basically talking about, and sorry if I keep kind of looking down there, I'm not cross-eyed, I've just wrote a load of notes. And annoyingly, I've wrote them in shorthand, so I'm looking at it now thinking, what the hell, what does that mean? So I'm going to try and make some kind of sense of it. But we'll see whether I do or not. But Dave was basically talking about, you know, console first impressions. Maybe there's a system out there which you bought based on the back of one game or a few games. And then perhaps you bought that system and it wasn't all it was cracked up to be. You know, maybe it was a big disappointment, or maybe quite the contrary. Maybe it was brilliant. So I'm going to try and maybe touch upon that. But then I'm also going to, you know, add a little bit more to it. So it's not really a response, is it? If I'm just kind of doing my own thing. But I thought I'd throw in a few things of my own where I'll talk about particular systems. Not every one that I've had, but particular systems that I have had, and what I thought of them, and maybe why I bought them. So it's kind of connected to Dave's tag, but like I said, I'm adding a few other things in as well. And it's funny because Dave started talking about the NES, or he mentioned it at some stage in his vid, and the NES to me is something, I've never got on with it, ever. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy it when people pick the games up, or pick up vids, when they do gameplay vids, it's kind of interesting. But I've never liked it. And I think it goes back to when I had an 8-bit computer. I mean, my poison of choice was an Amstrad, but obviously a lot of friends had Commodore 64s and the Spectrums as well. And when I saw the graphics on a NES, to me it just didn't look any better, although I think it kind of does now in hindsight. But at the time, it didn't look any better than what I already had. And not just that, but maybe the biggest stumbling block, well, too, one, it wasn't really marketed well, as far as I remember it. Even though it was, you know, Nintendo, and even the Master System with Sega, I didn't see a lot of adverts for it. Maybe they just kind of, you know, gave up because, you know, the UK was pretty much a computer place, wasn't it? We didn't really have consoles to begin with. Or, well, we had them, but the market, everyone kind of had a computer. And so I never got on with it. And the prices as well, which I was just going to touch upon a second ago, which I'll mention now, the prices are too expensive. I mean, you're looking at 30 quid or more for a NES cartridge. And as a kid, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age, whatever I would have been, while a NES was out, I didn't have that kind of money. Yes, I could have got, you know, a game maybe for my birthday or Christmas or whatever, but I couldn't afford to go out and buy hardly any games for a NES if I had one. Whereas in stark contrast, you know, for the Amstrad, or the Commodore 64, the Spectrum, even the ST and the Amiga, you know, games were very well priced. Now, admittedly, the high-priced ones were kind of 20, 25 quid, but, you know, budget games, $1.99, and that's what you could afford. And you know, there was some very good budget games as well. Not all of them were bad. A lot of them were. But anyway, so the NES has never meant anything to me, and I've never really been tempted. Even now, when I see a lot of people picking it up, I just look at it and think, well, I didn't have one, you know, back in the day, so I'm not going to get one now. And I stick by that. I'll look a right knobhead if I show one in a future kind of pick-up vid. But I can honestly say that the desire to get a NES has never, ever been there with me. Never been there, and it never will. It's something which I kind of missed out on because at the time I felt I had a superior product in the Amstrad, and then certainly with the Atari ST and the Amiga, which obviously was 16-bit anyway. So the NES, it skipped me by, and it doesn't bother me. So I'm going to talk about the Amstrad as well now, speaking of, because the Amstrad was the first computer I ever had. And I can't remember, I mean, if I thought about it, you know, hard enough and I looked at photographs, it would jog the memory. But I think it was either Christmas of '86 or Christmas of '87, I can't remember. And on the build-up to Christmas, there was this Amstrad-specific store in town. And I remember me and my dad would go in it, you know, it seemed as if it was every day. Obviously, it wouldn't have been every day. But every time we went into town, into the shopping centre, we would see this Amstrad-specific store. And right at the back of the shop, there was 2 Amstrad computers. One was the CPC 6128 with a disk drive, of course, and the other one may have been a 464 with like the multicoloured kind of keys and stuff. I can't remember that bit. All I remember was a 6128, and it had just come out, and I remember it just blowing my mind. Now, I'd never had a computer up until that point. I had played, I think, on my my uncle's Spectrum, but he wasn't really into it. It was just something which every now and again it was there, and I went on it. I did go on things like an Atari 2600, but again, it wasn't mine. It was, I think, my cousin had one of them, and you know, now and again, maybe I'd go on like an arcade machine because you know, like friends of the family had owned this fish and chip shop, and every now and again, when we'd be there, you know, we'd just saying hi, I guess, we'd go on Galaxians or bloody Defender. I can't remember what it was. But when I first saw this Amstrad computer, in fact, when I look back, it was probably my dad who was more excited at the time than me. But with him kind of liking it, I got to like it. And I just remember seeing it in the shop. And every single time, like I say, we went to the shopping centre or the mall, whatever you want to call it these days, I had to get one. Anyway, so come Christmas, when they said, what do you want for Christmas? I said, I want that Amstrad, I want to get it. And I remember getting it, opening it up on Christmas morning, the big box, setting it up. And it was, you know, magical memories. And the first game that I played was essentially one of the reasons why I got the Amstrad, which kind of ties in with Dave's topic, and that game was Who Dares Wins 2, and I got it on a compilation. I think it was called 5 Star, not to be confused with the band, who I mentioned a few videos back, where I stole Stedman's walking stick. What a thief. Unbelievable. But anyway, that story's been done and dusted. But yeah, I bought Who Dares Wins, or I had bought for me Who Dares Wins 2 on this pack. I think, what else was on there? 3 Weeks in Paradise, Zoids, if anyone remembers Zoids, Equinox, and I think Spin Dizzy. I'm possibly missing one. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. But anyway, all those games are on it. But the one that I really liked was Who Dares Wins 2. One of my favourite games of all time. I was even playing it the other day, albeit via an emulator. But it just looks and plays the same. But I guess emulation's another topic for another day. And I absolutely loved it. So the Amstrad really, you know, one of my, nearly said my favourite, one of my favourite systems of all time, without doubt. Obviously, that decision, if you like, is clouded by nostalgia because I used to have one. Now, it's funny because moving on, and I was happy with the Amstrad. I either got it, like I say, Christmas '86 or Christmas '87, but I used it throughout, you know, that year, and then all of '88, all of '89, and all of 1990, really. I absolutely loved the Amstrad, even though the Amiga was out, and I did want one. I was desperate to get an Amiga, I think it was Christmas of '89, but in the end, I ended up getting what do you call it? It was a Rally Cobra mountain bike, like red and white. Brilliant. I loved it. And mountain bikes back then were all the rage. So I chose to get one of them instead of an Amiga. And then the following Christmas, I said, I'm going to get an Amiga. That's what I wanted. I wanted, for Christmas of 1990, a Commodore Amiga. I'd made my mind up. I was going to get one the year before, but I didn't. I got my bike, and you know, I wasn't unhappy with that decision. I needed a bike and all the rest of it. So Christmas of 1990, all set to get an Amiga. My parents said, what do you want? I said, Amiga, please. That's what I want. All my friends are getting them. Best computers in the world. You've got to have an Amiga. If you don't have an Amiga, you're a loser. And you've got to have an Amiga. So that's what I wanted. And at that time, remember, I still had my Amstrad 6128 with disk drive. And I also had a tape recorder. Oh, that's also what I got at Christmas '89. There's a bit of like a stocking filler. Or maybe it was '88, I can't remember. I got a tape recorder so I could play tapes as well as discs on my Amstrad. But anyway, at that time, still had my Amstrad 6128, and I was reading a magazine called Amstrad Action. And if you're aware of the Amstrad, you'll surely be aware of that magazine. Was it official? I don't think it was. It was an unofficial Amstrad magazine, but it was the one that you had to read, really. It was all about games, and that's the magazine, if you were an Amstrad fan, that you had to buy. And I bought it pretty much every month. And from kind of early to mid-1990, all the way up to the end of it, every month was basically saying, right, there's a new system coming out. Forget the Amiga, forget the Mega Drive, forget anything else, you want to get this system. And that system that Amstrad Action was promoting was called the Amstrad GX 4000, which essentially was an 8-bit console. It was no different than what I already had, apart from it didn't have a mouse. Well, not a mouse, sorry. It didn't have like the joystick. It didn't have a keyboard. It didn't have anything. It was just a console. Essentially, it was a NES, which I didn't like anyway, is what I ended up kind of buying. And it was the stupidest mistake, game-wise, that I've ever done in my life. But even though it was a stupid mistake buying the GX 4000, because within months, it had gone from being like 150 quid to about 50 quid, and you could see it in clearance stores, trying to get rid of it for like 20 quid. No one was buying it. And I think they ended up being something like 30 games officially came out, maybe even less. It was a similar sort of figure. I will say that they're quite rare, and certainly some of them are very expensive now, you know, but in terms of overall quality, the GX 4000 is, well, how do you say, bollocks, I think is the best way to say it. And I turned down an Amiga, essentially, to get one. But it's funny, because on Christmas Eve, Christmas Eve 1990, I knew I'd made the wrong decision. And I remember, like, picture it like it was yesterday, and it would have been on the stairs of my old house, which would have been on that photo album, which I keep talking about buying that old house back, but whether that is a good thing to do or not, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It will probably never happen anyway. But anyway, I remember being on the stairs, looking at, what was it? It must have been something like maybe C&VG. I can't remember. But I was looking at some Amiga graphics, and all my friends were still getting an Amiga at Christmas. And my dad had just come in from work, and he, you know, we said hello, all the kind of the usual stuff. And I said, oh, Dad, I said, I'm thinking about getting an Amiga for Christmas. So naive, like Christmas Eve night, as if my dad could just go out and get an Amiga instead of a GX 4000. But so completely naive, didn't really understand, 12 years of age. And I remember him going, he said, well, I'll tell you what. He said, why don't you get, maybe, you know, see what Father Christmas brings. I mean, I was 12, I should have known better. He says, just see what he brings. And if it's the GX 4000, if it's the Amstrad thing, then just enjoy that. And then maybe next year get an Amiga. And I was like, yeah, actually, he kind of won me over. But it's just funny how I just expected him to go out and just get an Amiga Christmas Eve night, you know. So anyway, the next morning comes, and sure enough, it's a GX 4000. Now, I was happy. I did want one, although I had been duped into buying it by bloody Amstrad Action, and to think it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it really wasn't. And so I think it was Boxing Day or the day after, with a load of Christmas money, I went into Dixon's. Again, remember it like it was yesterday. I bought Navy Seals and I bought Robocop 2. And they were 25 quid each, which is a lot of money to pay for what is essentially an Amstrad port. You get the same game on cassette or disc for like a fiver. I mean, to be fair, they were slightly brushed up in terms of graphics and sound, but only marginally. You just really couldn't tell a difference. And ultimately, the developers were very lazy, and they didn't give a monkeys about the system, and that's why it flopped, really. Also, the timing, because like I said, the Mega Drive was out, the SNES was only about a year or so from coming out. In fact, it'd probably already come out in Japan. So the timing was horrific. And especially for an Amstrad owner, if you had an Amstrad computer, there was no need to get a GX 4000. So we'd been hoodwinked and duped into getting into buying this console. But in terms of nostalgia, I wouldn't change it for the world, because it's formulated all those memories, and it just brings back, kind of happy times, happy memories. Now, since then, I have bought a GX 4000, but this was about 10 years ago, maybe even more, and I didn't really think much of it, although nostalgically, I did enjoy a few games, such as Burning Rubber, which came with the console, came with every console. I did enjoy that, and I still think it looks pretty good for an 8-bit, machine, and I like the sound as well. Navy Seals, as I touched upon, that was the game I bought, I think, on Boxing Day of 1990, or one of them that I bought. That, to me, is arguably the best game on the system. It is rock hard, and a lot of people don't like Navy Seals, and I can only presume they don't like it because they're rubbish at it, because it's a really difficult game. But in terms of graphics and playability, I think it's really good. Check it out. Not now, not in the middle of a sentence. Well, do what you want. Your channel, your rules. But, check out Navy Seals on the GX 4000. It looks really good. And remember, it's an 8-bit system. Looks good, sounds good, plays good, but it is really hard. But yeah, I really like that game. Robocop 2, from memory, was just basically a port from the Amstrad version. There's no real, justification, if you like, for paying 25 quid for that. Pang was a good game, but again, I think Pang was out on the cassette and the disc, and it wasn't that much different. So again, it was kind of silly. So it was a big mistake by Amstrad to release that, and it was a big mistake by me to buy it, and an even bigger mistake to choose it, over an Amiga. Again, so for the second year in a row, I didn't get an Amiga. And it's funny, because it ties me on to the following Christmas of 1991, because that's the Christmas that I got the Atari ST. And I did, again, I wanted an Amiga. So for the third year in a row, I wanted to get an Amiga, but I didn't get one. And ultimately, the reason why is because at some stage, it was either late 1990 or early kind of 1991, one of, or maybe my best friend at the time, certainly one of my best friends, he got an Atari ST. I think I've told this story before, where I went to knock on his door to see if, he was coming out to play, I guess. That sounds a bit weird. And he was at Cubs. He was at Cubs, and his dad answered the door and went, no, he's at Cubs, but he's going to be back in about 20 minutes. Do you want to come in and wait? Nothing dodgy, And I said, yeah, all right. And he went, well, just go on upstairs. He said, we've just bought this new computer. The boys, because 2 brothers, he said, they don't know about it yet. So you can go and have a go, see what you think. So I did. I went upstairs, and it was the Atari ST. So I got to play on their ST before they did, and I've always kind of teased them about it, even to this day. Always will, very childish. And I really liked it. And of course, because, my best friend, because he had one, that meant that I wanted to get one as well. So we could trade games. He just lived down the street. So he very much influenced me to get an ST. And I loved it. So come Christmas, a few months later, my mum and dad said, what do you want to get? I said, I want to get an Atari ST. And I got one. It was the Atari ST. I've touched upon this many times before. It was the Atari ST-E, and it was in the pink kind of Discovery Extra box. I'm still looking for it. It does come up every now and again on eBay, but usually battered, and I want to get it kind of mint condition, which is a very hard task. It's going to be a tall order to do that. And then, of course, I've got to get it shipped over to America. Stupid. It's going to be very expensive. But again, that's another bridge we'll cross if and when we come to it in the future. But the Atari ST, I absolutely loved it. And I used it pretty much from, on my friends from like late 1990, give or take, all the way through 91, 92, 93. Still had it in 94, 95, still kind of used it, although, the latter part of those years, I seldom touched it. And the reason why is because in Christmas of 1992, as I used my kind of cross-eyedness there, Christmas 92 got a SNES. I really wanted a SNES. And I wanted one because of Street Fighter 2. It was that simple. I saw Street Fighter 2. All my friends were absolutely wax lyrical about this game. It looked absolutely stunning. It is stunning. It's arguably my favourite game of all time. If you were to say, what's your favourite game of all time? I'd probably say Street Fighter 2. It just plays really well. Even today, I just think it plays amazing, looks amazing, sounds amazing. Everything about it, a brilliant game. Although, ironically, when I opened up the package, the parcel, what's the word I'm looking for? The presents on Christmas Day, I didn't get the Street Fighter 2 pack. I got the Super Scope. But I wasn't bothered because it was kind of fun. We had a laugh with it. And I ended up getting Street Fighter 2 anyway, maybe a few days later with Christmas money. So it didn't bother me that I didn't get it on Christmas Day. But yeah, I bought a Super Nintendo just for, essentially, Street Fighter 2. Just an amazing game. And one of my favourite consoles of all time. And very quickly, I have touched upon this before. Look how long I've been talking, bloody hell. There's still a way to go as well. But I always feel guilty about my Super NES because I really wanted one. I was desperate to get one. And when I finally did, like I say, Christmas '92, I did play on it, and I did play on it a lot. You know, games like, well, Street Fighter 2, the Super Scope stuff, Super Soccer, Star Wars, or Super Star Wars. I remember borrowing a friend's copy of Rival Turf and thinking it was brilliant. I played on other stuff like, what else came out? I can't even remember. But a lot of games that came out for the SNES, like 92, 93. Oh, F-Zero, I think. F1 Exhaust Heat. That's another couple. And I loved it. But the problem is, I had my Atari ST, and you could copy games back then. So we were just trading with my friends on the playground and outside of school. We were just trading Atari ST games. So basically my Atari ST library consisted of like 300 games, albeit 299 of them were copied. Whereas, you know, the console games for the SNES, I mean, they were 40, 50 quid. I think Street Fighter 2 when it came out was like 80 quid or something mental like that. When it very first came out, and I think it was reduced to like 60. It was a very pricey game, and it was a very pricey system. And as a 14-year-old, where was I going to get that money from? I mean, yes, I had pocket money. Yes, I had a paper round, but I couldn't afford games for that. You know, so that was my choice. What do? Do I save up all of my money and get a SNES game once in a blue moon? Or do I just kind of prefer the Atari ST and just get games every week? And that's kind of what happened in the end. I ended up just preferring the Atari ST. And within a year, I think it was about 10 months later, I'd sold the SNES to the neighbour across the street. And it's a gaming decision. In the scheme of life, very unimportant. But in terms of games, it's probably my biggest gaming regret. And I just got rid of it, you know, to this kid. And because I was 15 by this point, and you're at that age where you want to go out, you're meeting girls, you're spending money. I took 2 different girls on 2 different nights to see Dances with Wolves, I think around about that time. And it was a 3.5-hour movie, and I went on successive nights with different girls. What a player I was. Unbelievable. I was bored stiff, especially the second night. It was like, oh crap, I've seen this before. I know what happens. It's a 3.5-hour movie with Kevin Costner. Unbelievable. That's a story for another day. But yeah, and I sold it because, like I said, I wanted money to go out, and it was a massive regret. And I did buy a SNES again about, 1999, 2000, but it never really worked for me. I looked at the graphics in 99, 2000, just looked at the games, and I thought, this is rubbish. I didn't enjoy it. Whereas, you know, I think it was last year or the year before, and it would have been on a pickup vid, I did pick up a SNES, albeit an American console, and I appreciate it again now, I really do, but there's a time around about the millennium, as I say, where I didn't like it. I just thought it was rubbish. And I think because the SNES wasn't retro enough. You know, retro's cool now, it's good. We can go back and look at old systems and appreciate it for what they were. Whereas in 99, 2000, the SNES hadn't long been, you know, disbanded. So maybe I was still looking at it thinking, oh, it's rubbish. It's still too fresh in the memory. So that was the SNES. Really regret getting rid of it. But essentially, like I say, bought it for Street Fighter 2. Now, the following Christmas, 1993, I got a Mega Drive. But I don't think there's a specific game. I mean, there was always the likes of Sonic, which were out. But my cousin had a Mega Drive, and I had a few friends who did as well. And I always got to play Sonic. I did like it, but it was never enough for me to buy the system. I wasn't that bothered about it. It was a good game to play if it was there, but it's nothing I really wanted myself. I can't remember why I got the Mega Drive. It must have been because maybe Mortal Kombat, I guess, was out at the time, and maybe it was a popular game. A lot of friends at school must have been getting it, so maybe I did as well. That's all I can put it down to. And for the record, I got the Aladdin pack, which was a really good game. I really like it. So anyway, let's skip the Mega Drive because I've not really got much of a story for that. Although I did use a Mega Drive for a good 2.5 years, solidly. I hardly ever talk about the Mega Drive, so maybe a lot of people think that I didn't have one. I recently bought one back, as some of you may be aware. But yeah, I've never really picked games for it in the past, but there was a time where I had a lot, and probably still got a lot of them. I don't want to guess how many, but maybe as many as 150, if not more, back in the UK, because I didn't sell them. Or I didn't sell many of them anyway. But again, that's another story for another day. Fast forward to the PS1. Now, I remember being in... Well, it first started when I was at college, probably late 94, early 95, and a friend of mine would bring in the Edge magazine. I'm rehashing a lot of old stories, because I know I've touched upon this before. And we were at college one day, and we should have been really, you know, listening to what the lecturer or whatever was saying. But we weren't. We were reading a copy of Jason's Edge magazine, and on the front cover it had the PS1. I remember just mocking it, because it looked like a Fisher-Price toy. And I was like, that's not going to catch on. Look at it, it's rubbish. Well, who's that aimed at? 3-year-old kids? And we were looking at it thinking it's absolutely rubbish. But he was like, well, it might look a bit dodgy. We said, look at these quality of the games. And we turned the pages. And I completely changed my mind. I was like, that looks bloody amazing. But I'd forgot about it because I had my Mega Drive and that's all I was playing back then. Still had my ST, but I wasn't really using it. And so fast forward to probably around about October, November, give or take, and I was in town and I was in WH Smith's and I was just looking to buy a magazine. I can't remember what it was, but I noticed that the first issue of the official PlayStation magazine had come out and it caught my eye. And I thought, oh, PlayStation, that's what Jason had showed me a few months ago. Because obviously this is all before the internet, you know, so I'd completely forgotten about the PlayStation. And I picked up the magazine and I just randomly kind of, as you do, you know, just open it at a random page, standing there in the store. And I opened it up on a preview, or maybe it was a review, I can't remember. But either way, it was of Destruction Derby. And I looked at that game, and the graphics, they absolutely blew me away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It seemed like such an amazing step up. And of course, it was CD, the games were on CD, so you had CD quality sound, music, I could store loads of tracks on there, and I thought, this is unbelievable. And I knew I had to get one. So it was pretty much Destruction Derby, which made me get a PlayStation 1. But what absolutely confirmed the fact that I had to get a PlayStation 1, it may even have been that same day, possibly, or a day or two later. And again, another story I've told before, so I'll try and keep it short. But I was passing I was walking through town, and there was all this, you know, commotion, a big noise going off in this store as I was passing it. And that store was Game, obviously the computer store. And I thought, what's going on there? What's all that noise about? There must have been about 30, 40 people gathered around this TV, and bellowing from the television was the sound of John Motson, football commentator. And I thought, what the hell's that? And so I kind of walked into the store because, you know, curiosity got the better of me. And it was FIFA 96. Now, you can look at FIFA 96 as a game now, and it looks rubbish. But it blew me away that this game had commentary. It was literally a real-life commentator talking over the top of the game as you're playing it, like saying all the players' names and all that kind of stuff. And I just thought, I don't believe what I've just witnessed there. I don't believe that. I've got to get that. So I think that was kind of, you know, November, maybe early December. And I said to my parents again, even though by this time I was 17, so I remember being a bit paranoid. Am I too old to be getting this? But I just thought, I've got to get one. And I did. Got a PlayStation 1. I think on Christmas Eve I went out and I bought Loaded, Destruction Derby, FIFA 96. And I think I bought another one. I can't remember what it was. I'm not sure. But anyway, Christmas Day, got my PlayStation 1. And it was an amazing system. And I've touched upon the Saturn as well in my notes as well. I always felt sorry for the Saturn because when that was kind of out, 97, 98 time, it's still technically being released. Games are still coming out for it. I was working in Electronics Boutique, and the whole back wall was full of PlayStation 1 games. I mean, full to the brim. Then you had a little bit as well to the side. You had a few PC games and other systems as well. But the Sega Saturn, even though it was a relevant system at that time, 1997, it had this little tiny corner, little tiny stand in the middle of the room of the shop, and it hardly had any games on it because no one was buying them. So as a result, we weren't ordering them in. You know, there's just a few, and I always felt sorry for it, and that's what made me get one. You know, I love the kind of the 2D powerhouse machine that it is, even though most games tended to focus on the kind of 3D look. So I love the Saturn, I really do. But I didn't really buy it for a specific game. I bought it because I felt sorry for it. Because no one was buying the stuff. I've got one memory of somebody coming in and pre-ordering Enemy Zero. This woman came in. I can't remember it like it was yesterday. She came in and asked to pre-order it for her son, and then a few weeks later she came back in and bought it. And she was the only person who did. And I think she was the only person as well, on behalf of her son, who pre-ordered Sonic R. Just nobody was really buying games for the Saturn. It was crazy. Just once in a blue moon. And like I say, I just felt sorry for it. And ever since, I've always had a soft spot for the Sega Saturn. But make no mistake, I prefer the PlayStation 1. So anyway, N64, and yeah, that's a funny one, because this is another one where I, as the original tag, what Dave was talking about, this is a system that I bought based off the back of one game. And remember it like it was yesterday, that old cliche again. I was in Toys R Us, and I don't know what I was buying. Maybe I was just going to buy something for the PlayStation 1. Maybe I was having a bit of a browse, I can't remember. But I walked past a booth or a display cab, and I saw the, what did I see? Super Mario 64. How could I forget that? Super Mario 64. honestly, I couldn't believe what I'd witnessed. It looked absolutely amazing. I kind of had one of those kind of like double looks. Is anyone kind of looking behind me? No one's looking. It's free. I'm going to go on it. So I went on it and playing around with the analog stick and the whole 3D world, and you could kind of go anywhere, well, anywhere. And it just blew me away. I thought graphically it was fantastic. I liked the sound. I liked the speed of it. I just liked everything about it. The world just seemed so expansive. And it was just a great game, and I knew I had to get one. And I think that was a preview. I don't think the N64 had came out. I think it was maybe a week or two from coming out. It was a bit of like a preview for people to just to see what was about to come out. And so, like I say, I went on it. I thought, I've got to get that. Absolutely fantastic. And then within a week or two, or whenever it did come out, I remember going to Software Box and buying it. And I bought it, of course, with Mario, and it was brilliant. I've always liked that game, even though I've not played it for about a decade. But if and when I buy that game back in the future, well, not if, I definitely will. So when I buy that game, obviously you'll see it on a pickup vid, and I know I'm going to enjoy it because I just loved it at the time. I thought it looked amazing, and it really genuinely did blow me away when I saw it. I thought, I've got to get it. So that's that. What other systems have I touched upon? Oh, well, there's a couple of systems here which, yeah, I did buy, but I bought these after they long after they came out. The first one is the Atari Jaguar. I bought an Atari Jaguar in or around 2001, 2002, and I bought it purely for Aliens vs Predator, which incidentally I do think is a good game, but it's not enough to warrant buying a system for. But I did enjoy it, and the funniest thing about that is I bought that system with Aliens vs Predator for around about 50 quid, give or take, on eBay, whereas now, or maybe it's come down in price, but there was a spell around about 7-8 years ago where Aliens vs Predator on eBay would get about 80 quid. So I remember buying it and not really getting into the Jaguar. I didn't really like the controller. There wasn't many games out for it, so I just put it back on eBay a few months later, and I doubled, maybe even tripled my money. It was stupid. But yeah, there's a system which it didn't really mean anything to me. It's funny because, as I've said many times before, me and Pete, SNEStastic, we had this kind of idea, this grand idea of going for a friendly race of the first to 50, or maybe it might have been a full set, I can't remember, of Atari Jaguar games. And we both picked up a few games, and then the pair of us realised that this is rubbish, when we just conveniently kind of ignored it and hoped that the talk of it would just go away, and sure enough it did, and we just, yeah, it wasn't for us, I think, at the time. In terms of getting one in the future, will I get an Atari Jaguar? Well, I've got to be honest, it doesn't really appeal, although, you know, when I see people like Dave Webster, who obviously, like I say, I'm doing the tech response to, he does a lot of Atari Jaguar games, and a few of them do look appealing. And I don't think it's ever going to be a system that I'll look at and think, I really like this. But there are a number of games for it which do look interesting. And if they're cheap, I may get them, but I may not. It's certainly not something which is, you know, on the agenda. If anything these days, and this is a video for another day, but if anything, I'm really scaling my collection down these days, and I'm being very specific about what I buy. So maybe buying an Atari Jaguar would be a bit of a mistake, I guess. But we'll see. If one's going cheap, I might pick it up. We'll see. And the penultimate the penultimate system I want to talk about is the Neo Geo CD. Now, I bought one of these, again, around about the same time as the Jag, so early part of the millennium. And actually, yeah, no, it would have been maybe about 99, 2000, maybe around about that time, because I still had my PS1. And what I personally found with the Neo Geo is that the games looked really good and I liked them, but the loading times were awful. And quite frankly, my mindset at the time, like I say, I had a PS1, I thought the PS1 games were better. I thought they looked better, I thought they played better, I thought they were more exciting. So even though I had the CD, the Neo Geo CD, I really hardly played it, and I had it for about 6 months, if that, and I got rid of it, and I didn't miss it. And even to this day, I don't miss it. Now, I do have a few CD games, I still have a few. I'm sure they would have been on videos in the past. And sometimes I do get that urge to buy one again. Because the AES, I'd love an AES. As a kid, we all wanted one. It was the kind of a mythological kind of thing. It didn't exist. Well, it did exist, but no one had one, you know, because it was so expensive. And I do still, always will, like the idea of buying one, but I can't justify the prices. I think they're insane. And I think if you're going to get into the AES, you've got to really genuinely love the system. certainly if you're going to collect for it, because the games are they're too expensive. So the next best thing is the CD, and I have thought about getting one several times, on several occasions in the past. Never say never, but I don't know. I mean, I did have one, and like I say, I never really played them, because I just, quite frankly, preferred the PS1. So we'll see on that front. And then last but not least, I'm going to mention the Xbox 360, but before I do, I'm going to have a sip of tea before this gets freezing. In fact, it already is freezing. But yeah, the Xbox 360, because this, again, comes back to, I guess, the point of the tag, in the sense that I bought an Xbox 360 off the back of one game. And remember it like it was yesterday, that cliche for the millionth time in this video comes out. I was in HMV in Oxford, and I was just having a bit of a browse. I was killing time, really. I had nothing to do. I was just waiting for the time to go by until I met up with people. And I thought I'd just have a wander around, so I did. I was looking at the CDs upstairs and the music section, and then I was bored of that, and I went across to the other side of the room where it was the games. And as I was I wasn't really looking to buy anything. Well, not really. I definitely wasn't looking to buy something. Just killing time, like I say. And as I was walking past the this cab, all this kind of sound came out from it, emitted from it, and it caught my attention. And I looked at it. It was Call of Duty. Here we go again, Call of Duty. But it was Call of Duty 2. And based on World War II, and I thought that sounds amazing. I kind of turned around, looked at it, and again it was one of them things, the display cab where it's got the two controllers. There was no one on it, and I thought, well, I'm gonna go on it, and I went on it, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It was one of the desert stages involving like the British soldiers, maybe based in Tunisia, I think, and even today I always will. I just love putting that particular level on it. It takes me back instantly to what would have been 2006 maybe 2007. From when that came out, and I played that game, and it looked brilliant, it looked amazing, sounded fantastic, played really well, and I thought, I've got to get this. And this came at a time where, I mean, the Xbox and the PS2 were out. Now, I did have several Xboxes and several PS2s, but I didn't really play them that much, really. They were kind of reserved for when friends came round, for multiplayer. But in terms of me actively going out and buying PS2 and original Xbox games, I didn't really do it. There was a few, of course there was, like Burnouts, Pro Evolution Soccer was probably the best example, or maybe Grand Theft Auto games. I had all them. But really those systems, Xbox and PS2, I didn't really play them by myself that much. So I'd kind of gone off gaming, for a good 3, 4, maybe 5 years. Like I say, even though I had them, I wasn't really playing them, and I certainly wasn't in the loop what was coming out. I had no idea the Xbox 360 was coming out, because again, even though the internet was out by this time, of course, 2006, and I'd had it since early part of the millennium, gaming websites, they weren't something that I frequented. They still aren't. I'm just not bothered. I don't really know what's coming out. If it wasn't for YouTube, I wouldn't know the PS4's coming out, or the 720, or Xbox Infinity, or whatever it's going to be called. So anyway, I was completely out of the loop of gaming, and I saw the Xbox 360, played on it, Call of Duty 2, I thought I've got to get one, and within a few weeks I did buy one. And brilliant system. I really, really do like it. Got a lot of nostalgia for it, even though it is technically, still a current system. Excuse me. So I think that's it, really. I've just touched upon a few systems which I had, why I bought them, if there's specific games, as to what made me get those systems at the time. Maybe there's a few others, but those are the ones which I've just wrote on there. So all I'll say is I'll put a link to Dave's channel. Please check him out, because like I said, he's a really nice guy, and he's only got 290 subs, which admittedly for some is still quite a lot, but when you click on that channel, I think you'll very quickly see, he does deserve a lot more. So please check him out, and if I check, it's down to you now, if I check on his channel in a month, and he's got like 291 subs, he's gone up like 1, it's your fault, you personally. So check his channel out. You will really like what he does, because he's a nice guy and he comes across really well. And he's someone who I've been aware of for a long, long time. And he just deserves more subs. And obviously, I think the more subs people get, the more inclined they'll be to integrate more within the community and make more vids. And that's great. That's what we all want, isn't it? So anyway, that's all I want to say. Actually, there's one more thing I want to say. There's no need to add this on, but I'm going to quickly add it on because it bugged me. It bugged me. And no one's going to care other than me. But I just want to say this. A few videos back, I used the pronunciation etiquette instead of etiquette. Now, I always use the word or the phrase etiquette, all right? But the reason why on this specific video, and I think I said it 2 or 3 times, etiquette, is because I think it had come off the back of when Margaret Thatcher died, right? And I'm interested in politics anyway. Again, that's for another video. But all weekend, from that weekend where she passed away, I was on YouTube watching clips of Margaret Thatcher and just politics in general, but from that period of time, from, you know, the miners' strike, the winter of discontent and all that kind of stuff. And it was interviewing all these people, and obviously the people who it was interviewing from all these episodes that happened in time, they were pretty much all, well, the majority were politicians, and pretty much all politicians are posh, and they pronounce things differently. And on every single occasion over the course of this weekend, when the word etiquette was pronounced by these posh people, it was pronounced as etiquette. And for some reason, I don't know why, I thought, maybe that's how you pronounce it. I've been spending 30-odd years saying etiquette. Not 30-odd years, that wasn't like 2 or 3 saying etiquette. That was too big a word for me back then. Too big a word for me now, quite frankly. But I thought maybe I'll call it etiquette now. So I did. I came on camera and I just said etiquette. And then when I watched it back, I thought, what a dickhead. It's etiquette. Even if technically it's pronounced etiquette, which I think it is technically, no one calls it etiquette or pronounces it etiquette. It's etiquette. So I just wanted to say that. I've not turned posh. Obviously, it's etiquette. And maybe just for one video, I got above my station and I tried to pretend I was posh when I wasn't, based on the people who I was watching. They influenced me, that's all it was. And as we know, you know, YouTube is a very influential place, and that proved it that weekend. So anyway, thanks for watching. This has gone on a long, long time. You deserve a medal if you've watched all of this. And please check out Dave's channel. Thanks for watching. See you later.